Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, S4HANA versus ECC, Understanding Your Options as a Supply Chain Operations User, Manager, and Leader. This series will take you into a deep dive into what is different in S4 versus ECC. And today we're going to talk and discuss the areas of demand planning, supply planning, and MRP. And with each of these webinars, we invite you to examine your own supply chain and inspire you to use the powerful capabilities already built in SAP ECC and in S4HANA. Today's presentation is going to last approximately 30 minutes, and we're going to follow up at the end with a question and answer time period. Please feel free to capture your questions in the question or the chat section during the webinar. And then I'm also going to be posting some additional links and material throughout the discussion that are relevant to what we're discussing today. And at this time, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, Christy Bain. Christy's primary responsibility at Reveal is a thought leader and driving for supply chain outcomes through active engagement with Reveal's clients and developing support and content. Christy has over 20 years of practical integrated supply chain management experience across a variety of industries, from fashion, retail, and entertainment to consumer packaging and manufacturing and automotive accessories. So please, let's welcome Christy Bain.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Everyone, thank you very much for joining. This is a very exciting topic, and we have a total of 30 minutes together today to introduce a couple of key concepts to you. We could spend hours discussing any of these, but what I'm hoping to do today is give you some highlights and some things to think about as you're thinking about your journey to S4HANA, or for those of you who already are up and running, maybe some thoughts and opportunities for where you could harness even more value out of that existing system. So where we're going to start today is we're going to discuss 3 key changes that are coming our way, and this is as it relates to supply and demand planning. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what the new Fiori workspace is going to offer to us. And then we'll finish with some ideas and thoughts around how we prepare to make the leap, either from ECC to S4HANA, from nothing into S4HANA or another ERP solution, or if we're already up and running on S4HANA, into actually leveraging some of these tools. And they'll bring it home with a wrap up and a Q&A, and I'm really excited and looking forward to those questions. Okay, so let's jump right in. One of the first significant changes that we're going to see in S4HANA is we're going to see that MRP areas are now part of our environment. So the period at the end here is important. MRP areas exist, period. The great news for us, though, is that the data maintenance is now simplified to make it much, much easier for us to be able to use these and to be able to maintain them appropriately. This is an upgrade from storage location dependent planning. So if you're doing that right now, this is an opportunity for you going forward. You can still exclude storage locations simply by turning off that MRP type or moving it to ND. And you are able to then differentiate with MRP specific planning parameters. And this is really the big benefit of being able to use an MRP area. It's really 2 things. It's being able to have that independent planning parameter for that particular MRP area. It's going in and being able to customize the way that we're handling replenishment. And then also the ability to be able to easily see and transfer those requirements back and forth from one MRP area to another. So that is very, very powerful. The other note on this is that MRP areas, just as they do in ECC, support subcontracting. However, the difference is if you are not using an MRP area in S4HANA for subcontracting, you no longer get the differentiation between what you have at your plant and what you are supplying to your subcontractor in terms of your MRP signal. So you must have MRP areas in place to allow you to properly account for what is needed at that supplier and to trigger you to actually make the move from one location to another. So for those of us who are maybe working in a multi-source environment, this is particularly important. And also in S4, a source is considered to be production version, external supplier, subcontractor, so any type of mixed environment across that supply network. So when we get into our subcontractors, we must have MRP areas in order to support seeing that signal. Otherwise, you're just going to get a net calculation irrespective of where that inventory is physically located. What is really nice about this, though, is that we are able to now do direct delivery into those MRP areas. So that purchase order, if you were to place it from a component or raw material supplier or even another subcontractor, you are able to deliver and transfer those goods into that MRP area, your vendor location, as vendor provided stock without having to pass it through your plant. So that is very nice. And then we also have simplified planning views. So if you are used to that MRP view and your stock requirements list, as you scroll down at the top, you have all your plant information, and then down at the end of that planning horizon, now we've got information on those subcontractors, and then below that, we've got another subcontractor. A lot of times folks find those screens a little challenging to read, especially as you watch the requirements transfer through. This is a much more conventional look and feel. It looks just like if you were to be doing transfers from plant to plant. So you're able to actually go in and view those MRP areas independently, as well as still be able to monitor and check your stock balances in total. So very nice change, but significant change there in the way that we think about and approach our MRP areas. Okay. The next thing, of course, to talk about is MRP Live. It's alive. So a couple of things here. First of all, bad news. No more MRP list yet. No more processing indicator to know that we've addressed that issue of the day. And now we're going to get into the good stuff. Now we have goof-proof cross-plant planning. And what I mean by this is that when we go and we run for that material, it is going to go through the entire supply network, and it is going to plan for us in the right order. So before we had to manage that with the way that we were sequencing our batch jobs or our scope planning, in the future, we no longer need to do that. SAP will do that automatically for us. Simplification and flexibility. So we have expanded selection criteria for those MRP runs when we go into MD01N to set them up. The other thing that we have is we have a lot of simplification in the master data maintenance. So examples of this would be no more quota arrangement usage indicator required. We've got the simplified processing in terms of the way that we're going to run net change versus regenerative and those kinds of things. So really making that easier and more accessible to us. Okay. Another thing that's great is that we can use classic MRP in conjunction with MRP Live, although that comes with a number of cautions. But just know that there are some types of planning that are not conducted fully through MRP Live as it sits today. So in that, examples of that would be something like consumption-based planning, reorder points, those kinds of things are still going to be subject to that classic MRP run. The other thing that's nice, and it's a great show of support, is that MRP Live is compatible with PPDS. So if you are working in an environment where you have maybe semi-finished and finished goods or finished goods only running through PPDS, you can still have that work smoothly within the MRP Live environment. Here's another one that's a game changer for us, PMRP. So we know that MRP, Material Requirements Planning, is blissfully unaware of capacity. So this is really next gen. We now have PMRP, which is Predictive Material and Resource Planning. So this is going to give us a new tool set to really balance our supply with our demand. And it's going to help us to quickly go out and identify where we have constraints and bottlenecks. This is really in that mid to long-term horizon. So if you think about the previous use case for long-term planning, you can see a lot of that transitioning now into these more flexible and predictive tools. And it's going to allow us to capture simulations and alternatives. And it's also going to give us proposals and let us know what the fit of that proposal is. And I actually have an example, not of PMRP, but of just material shortages here in a bit. I'll show you how SAP will actually propose this to us. And the great thing is that when we actually go in and accept that proposal, it's going to go ahead and automatically apply it for us, so we don't have to go through and execute that independently. So now it really is more of a workflow rather than a discrete activity that then we have to go and do a secondary step. It is all happening integrated in one place. With that, though, great power comes great responsibility. There are lots of options for how you can rebalance that capacity to make sure that that is working really well with how we're handling our finite scheduling, our capacity evaluation and leveling. And we're going to see that and hear more about it in our upcoming webinar, the next one that's coming up in August. But it allows us to even manage changes in the master data, what would happen if we were to add a shift or change a source and be able to play that through. Okay, so those are your three major changes. I have one bonus here to mention to you, and that is really around DDMRP. And this is really just a quick word of exclamation and excitement, and also a little bit of caution. So DDMRP is a very, very powerful way of managing variability and volatility and helping us to navigate in this VUCA world. And with this, I just want to note, it is really a new way of working. Not only is it going to impact the way that we are going to strategically buffer our inventory and make sure that we are even buffering for capacity, but it is also going to change the way that we are executing or pulling through the work to the manufacturing floor or to our suppliers from a procurement perspective. So this is a major change. You can think of this as a change in the framework for how you're actually managing your shop floor. It's a change in the framework for how you're positioning and managing that inventory. This is a huge topic, and it's a great one. But it is definitely, if we think about crawl, walk, run, sprint, this is in that walk and sprint position as we're thinking about it. But what a great opportunity for the future. So this is coming down the pipe, and it's now all 5 stages are fully supported in S4. And then also you can also use S4 in conjunction with IBP for additional analytics. All right, so welcome to Fiori. Some of us may have been using Fiori for a long, long time in very small chunks. We might be using it to be able to do things like PO approvals or purchase rec approvals from our phone. We might be using it to quickly resolve invoices or out on the shop floor. The purpose of Fiori has been to give us a purpose-built app that breaks our work down into bite-sized chunks for easy analytics and execution. So what Fiori really brings to us is this concept of resilience versus agility. So if resilience is our ability to recover and get back to a standing position, so you can see this person is holding on for dear life through this storm, and then at the end of it, they're going to be able to return to standing. Agility is our ability to actually move with that quick, easy grace, to be opportunistic, and to be able to move forward and weather that well. So with Fiori comes a great opportunity for additional agility. So one of the things that is most important about this is that the data starts to be brought to us. So when we have Fiori in place, it used to be pretty easy to work in isolation. So you can see the silos in the background here. And what would happen is that we could make decisions based on our own little corner of the world and what was best for us. So it was easy to fall into that local optimum. And even when you're trying your best with the information that you have available to you to make that best decision, it's easy to focus on just what was in front of you. And then you'd end up in those meetings to talk about the impact of what happened. And so the focus was always on lagging versus leading indicators. Fiori really changes this in the dashboard approach because it's actually going to start pushing information to you. And so we get these new workspaces. And if you're on S4HANA today and you're using the more conventional GUI, that is an easier way to make a transition from ECC into S4 and that it feels more familiar. But really a lot of the milk and cookies and the awesomeness that comes from being in the S4 environment really is delivered through the Fiori apps. And we start to talk about these more advanced features that help us to, ante up in the supply chain. Those come once we get into Fiori. And in order to get all the building blocks to be able to get there, we need to be able to have that information readily available to folks. So if you look here, this is still a lot of the same concepts, just the information is being pushed to us. So we're still seeing these elements of data integrity. So if we think about data integrity in the form of housekeeping, this is allowing us to quickly see where we have issues that need our attention. It also helps us to do things like exception monitoring because it's going to start to push information around where we might have disruptions and shortages. And by the way, this isn't just for our buyers and planners, but this also exists at every function within the supply chain. And what's really neat is we've had this capability for a long time where we start in one place in SAP. It's very easy to follow the breadcrumb trail and navigate to another to be able to see the impact. Now this becomes even easier and faster in Fiori. Probably my favorite part about this, though, is what you're seeing on the screen here is the enablement of flow. Here we have a situation where we are short some material, and you can see that broken out across time. It's in a graph that tells a good story. And this allows us to see where our issues are occurring and where we might need to be applying some actions in order to be able to recover. And based on the quality of our master data, we are getting proposals for how we might be able to resolve this. And down at the bottom, you can see we have different star ratings. Those star ratings tell us about the quality of the proposal that's being provided. So you can see here we've got one that has 1, which is going to partially resolve our issue, and then we've got a couple that have 2s, which are going to fully resolve our issue. And this is going to allow us to see, okay, what is it that we want to do here? What is going to be the path that we want to take in order to be able to resolve the shortage? And when we choose one of these, we can actually just go in and adopt the change. And what's happening there is sort of mind-blowing. It actually is going to go through and do the tactical execution for us. So this is really next level automation, and this is really the tip of the iceberg as far as what is available to us. This is one of the first things that was available to us in S4. So it's been around now and maturing cooking for a few years, but this is really great for those of us who are used to having to research and then to find the problem and then wait for an answer, and then once we have the answer to manually go in and execute things. That's an environment that a lot of us are used to having to work in. And it's very interesting that we can now go in and actually execute all the way through. So when we make that decision, it's actually going through and driving actions. And that's going to give us a place where we are able to better align our plan, schedule, and actual with less process integration breakdown. So it's really, really great that we can do that. So that's a little bit on Fiori. So, okay, great. So what are some of the things that we need to consider when we're thinking about how we are going to make the leap into being able to take advantage of this? So, it's being able to be in a single source of truth, being able to take advantage of these new pieces of technology is truly becoming a differentiator and being able to be a competitive force of good for our customers. And so as we think about how we fit into the overall supply chain ecosystem, right now we are all in a position where we are having to be good citizens and help one another in order to be able to resolve supply chain issues quickly. So we are closer in many cases than ever before to not only our customers, but also to our competitors as we're dealing with bottlenecks and allocations and other things that we're trying to work through. So being able to have access to this type of capability really starts to become a competitive advantage for us. So, if we're feeling like this or this, I think what we're trying to really get to is a place where we are, the lighthouse and the agility that is able to see through those storms and really provide some leadership and outlook and how we are able to step forward and resolve our customer issues. And as demand planners, as supply planners, as buyers, you know, it is our job to kind of weather the storm and stay steady at that helm in order to be able to help not only our external customers, but also our internal customers, which include our manufacturing floor. So it all begins with master data. The quality of our master data is the enabler to be able to do any of these other things. So we have to really take a serious look at where we sit today with the quality of our master data. And I'll tell you, most of us, you know, myself included, in prior organizations, I've looked at myself and thought, my master data is not so bad. I spend a lot of time on it. I think I'm really close to it. And then when I really am honest with myself and I think about how my master data or my business rules align with my business behaviors, or how I actually am conducting business, I find I'm not as clean as I would like to be. And I will tell you that will never be more readily apparent than if you start to take advantage of some of these new pieces of functionality. You know, we'll start to get proposals that don't make sense, and we're not ready to carry those through or adopt them. You'll start to see people are not able to use the results of the MRP run. It'll almost feel like you're doing the wrong thing faster. So it's really important to take the time to get the master data and the transactional data in place and in a good position so that we're able to take advantage of these tools. Otherwise, it's kind of like going to you know, your best friend for advice and only giving them half the story. Chances are the quality of that advice is not going to be so great. But the more honest and upfront you are, meaning you're translating your thought process and providing that context to SAP and the MRP engine, the better the quality of the results and the more of these tools that we are able to use and take advantage of. Okay. The other thing is that there is no pilot group. I want to go out and, you know, and try this for one person. It's integrated. So in order for this to work well, we have got to focus on aligning that integration. And the best way to do that is to get to a position where we are getting our plans, our schedule, and our actual in good alignment. And a lot of this is really around having that real-time transaction visibility. So increasing the speed of the data flow to enable more effective and efficient flow of materials. So now that data that we are relying on is giving us intelligence, and then we're making decisions. So in order for this to work, not only does our master data have to be correct, we have to also have the stability in our transactional data. So if you're looking for something to maybe help you think through where you are with that process, you know, one of the tools that we use for this is the business maturity continuum. So, and you can find this out on the Reveal website and take a look at it. It's prominently featured. But this helps us to go through and say, okay, where am I now, and am I at a place where I can really start to take advantage of some of these tools? So if you are coming out of business maturity stage 3, you know, you've got good data integrity, the information in the system is trustworthy, and you know, now you're really getting your rules and your behaviors in alignment. So what we intend to do is in fact what it is that we're doing. Now we're in a place where we can start to take advantage of something like MRP Live. And then as that is getting better and we're responding to our exception messages and we have a daily habit of reconciliation, then we can start to get into using things like the predictive MRP run for that mid to long-term planning, or starting to think about something like DDMRP, or really being able to take advantage of those tiles that are giving us proposals. But being able to take advantage of the information that we no longer have to pull, but is pushed to us, you know, and reliably count on that so that we're actually able to action it is a big step forward. So as you're thinking through that, this might just be another tool to help you think through where you want to be in order to be able to take advantage of the tools as they are. Okay. So to wrap it up here, the future is bright and the future is now. I don't think we could put more emphasis on, you know, this is happening. So in our last webinar, David did a great job of explaining, you know, where things are changing and where things are staying the same. And he took a lot of the notion of fear that the foundation was going to be significantly different. Yes, technically the foundation is different, but the functions and the features that we are used to experiencing at the core are still there, albeit they may look or feel a little bit different. What we have now in front of us is opportunity to really start to up our game, to take advantage of more of this information and really be able to simplify the workspace across the different functional areas, to be able to give people purpose-built apps and dashboards that are going to give them good insight. It lets us know when we walk in at the beginning of the day where we are. So if we are running classic MRP, or if we're in ECC today, the way that we're able to do this is through our MRP lists in the morning to see what's happened the night before. Now we're transitioning that over to Fiori tiles that are going to tell us what's new and what's different and what needs to be actioned. And that's going to update for us throughout the day. So you really have to focus on the process flow and making sure that folks are educated on the data and information that's available to them to help them to be successful. Okay. So the second thing is that, right now it feels like flow is really difficult for most of us. We've got constraints all over the place: labor, materials, transportation, and logistics. It's tough, and it's been tough for a while. But the more we have a good flow of information, the better we are in a position to make good decisions. And that's going to enable the flow of materials. So if we're thinking about things that are within our control, where we can invest our time and energy right now, improving the quality of that data and information, and really understanding the actions and decisions that are in front of us in order to be successful and enable the best flow possible, that is something that is within our control that we can go after right now. And the more that we are working from one single source of truth and we have those harmonized activities, the better and more empowered our team will be able to function, and the more we'll be able to break down those silos and have better communication. And the last thing I will leave you with here is that change is real and it's hard, and sometimes change is real hard. But if there's anything that we have learned, as folks who've been working in supply chain over the last few years, is that we can do hard things. And we do this by working together and collectively with the best technology support that we can get. But it really is about the people, it's about the processes, and it's getting that information into the system. Then we are able to take advantage of all these great new tools that are available to us. So I hope this got you a little interested. There's certainly so much more to discuss on any of these topics, but I hope this is enough to get you interested and curious and thinking about things. And just know, again, I want to reiterate what David said. We are still going to be able to conduct our business tomorrow if we're making this change from ECC to S4. How well we're able to do that and how much of the new technology we're able to consume really has a lot to do with making sure that we're in the best position possible to make that transition. Okay. All right, Kelly, I think I'd like to take some questions if we have some from the audience.
Wow, Christy, thank you. That was a lot of information, a lot of good information. And we do have some questions from the audience. So let's get started. I do have in MRP areas, is the ATP check still happening at a plant level?
So it is still happening at a plant level, but it depends on whether that is, if we're talking just a replacement for storage location stock, or if we are talking inventory out at the subcontractor. So in a subcontracting situation, it's going to evaluate whether that inventory is available at your plant, meaning it's been shipped over and is ready for the customer, or whether it is still sitting as subcontracting stock that is out for use at that subcontractor.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you know if there's any follow-up regarding your answer. There's a lot of buzz around the automation and additional integrations of S/4HANA. Will this help alleviate any of the nuisance chores like realigning past due items?
That's a great question. So housekeeping is a part of the job, right? We are constantly following up to find out why things haven't happened as expected, or working on our tolerances to close nuisance balances. So the difference here is that if we are in a Fiori workspace, we're going to start to see that information pushed to us so that we can go out and resolve it. If we are not, it remains the same activity as what we are experiencing today. So we will still be able to go in and pull any of our past due list displays, or be able to go into MD06 or MD07 and pull any past due MRP elements that are out there that need cleanup. So it makes the visibility easier. But we still have to do the work of getting the data integrity in place and making sure we're closing out those balances or getting new dates on them, as the case may be.
All right, the next question we have is, we've always struggled with using MRP. Is this easier in S4?
I wouldn't say that using MRP is easier in S4. I think you have to look at the challenges for why it's hard to use MRP today. And I'll tell you what a couple of the common reasons are. So most often folks say that they haven't been fully educated, like they know there's a lot of exception messages, but they don't really know what they mean, or there are too many of them to be able to go in on a day-to-day basis and resolve it. So the key to getting to a place where you can really use those results is making sure that the master data is in a good spot, that you have a daily habit of reviewing and resolving, at least starting to work your way through that pile, and to be able to sort it in priority order by the exception message number. So those are some things that can help. So I wouldn't say it's particularly easier to use, but the data may be easier to review for those of us who are now in the Fiori workspace.
Thanks, Christy. Just a reminder, if you have a question, please put that in the question or chat feature. And are there any changes to CM21 or in the functionality of CM21 for capacity planning? And a third part of that, and then you may just have to break this up a little bit, is S4, is there a different capacity planning tool for use? Which I think we'll go ahead and explain that in our next webinar.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say for all of those, stay tuned for the next webinar, because that's exactly what we're going to be going through. So that's a perfect lead in to get a little bit of information around what those changes are. And I won't bury the lead. Yes, there are some new tools. So our next person up, Sean Stokey, is going to be actually walking through that for us in August.
Thank you. And so that runs right into, that's it for questions today, but the next webinar, please join us. That is going to be August 17th, and that's going to cover what is the difference in S4HANA versus ECC in the production and capacity planning areas. So I also put the link for that in the chat, so you can go ahead and click that if you'd like to get it registered. Or feel free to visit our website under Insights and our webinars, and you can register that way as well. So that is the end of our discussion for today, and I just want to say thank you again, Christy, and everyone for joining us today, and have a great day.